Let our hearts not be hardened. To those living on the margins, there is room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. Too long we have wandered, burdened and undone, but there is room at the table for everyone. Let us sing the new world in. This is how it all begins. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There's enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, there is room at the table for everyone. Here and now we can be the beloved community. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There is enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There's enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. Let our hearts not be hardened. To the living on the margins, there is room at the table for everyone. This is how we gather in. For everyone. Everyone.
Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service for the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn now is number 1020 from the Teal hymnal, which is Woyaya. Please feel free to sing along as the Spirit moves you and stand in body or spirit while you join us in singing hymn number 1020, Woyaya.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know where then we will gather.
Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for those joining by Zoom remotely, where we will continue to live stream and post these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Alec Peck, a member of the Worship Committee, and I will also be your worship associate today. Other members of the Worship Committee who make this service possible include Adam Wedeking, who monitors our visual and online connections, and Kate Lewicki, who's in charge of our sound system. Thank you to you both. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. We welcome to this morning and to the opportunity to be together in community. This congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We come here to learn more about being in relationship to each other, how to listen, how to accept, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Welcome. We are glad you are here with us today. Now, before we move into the service, there are a few announcements that we'd like to share. We're going to mention a few websites, email addresses, and phone numbers, and at the end of the service, we're going to leave up a slide that has all of this information, and it's also available on our website. We'll be holding our summer yard sale on the first week in May. If you have any gently used or saleable items that you no longer need, we will be collecting donations of that form. All proceeds will go to the church fund. Please see Avery for further details or to sign up to volunteer for this worthy event. The Lunch Bunch will be gathering at Tio's Tacos on Saturday, April 20th at 1:30 p.m., followed by a tour of the Civil Rights Institute led by the Social and Environmental Justice Committee Chair, Adam Wedeking. All are invited to join for good food and fellowship, but please RSVP to Pat Wonder or to Adam Wedeking. Also a reminder that this month's board meeting is coming up on Wednesday, April 17th at 4:30 in the annex. And now I'd like to introduce the chair of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, Adam, to tell you about some of their upcoming events.
Good morning. The Social and Environmental Justice Committee and the UU Women's Federation are partnering together with Anti-Racist Riverside to take part in what they're calling their Family Dinner Series, which is a series of events where we break bread and discuss race and issues surrounding race in our lives and in our communities. The event we'll be holding will be a coffee hour. Here in the annex, we'll bring in a few tables and we can all sit around and kind of have discussions at our tables. We're trying to get people to sign up beforehand so we know how many people are here, and we make sure we have folks. We will assign seating so people are mixed in different groups of people. So we want to know who is here so we can arrange the seating. So there is a QR code on the screen here. There's a flyer if you're in the church. You can grab the flyer as you leave, or even just scan the QR code as you leave. If you have trouble with that and you're here in the church, after service, come see me and I can sign you up on the church laptop right here. Just come right up here to where I'm sitting there and I will sign you up right there. Because we want to get as many folks signed up now because we're going to open it to the public and we got a limit of 25. So we'll make sure the church has an opportunity to sign up. Hopefully I can see you all there. Again, this is May 11th, 1 to 3. This is during the May Women's Federation meeting. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite you all to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. And you are welcome to read with me as we begin the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Our speaker today is Wren Monsour, who has been attending UUCR for about a year, first by Zoom and now in person. Wren Vera Monsour is a classically trained singer and a student of library science. She decided to attend UUCR after seeing how her fellow pagans were welcomed in the Long Beach church. She lives with her wonderful wife, Quinn, and they hope to adopt a dog soon. And her sermon today is on asexuality and inherent worth. Asexuality is a sexual identity, like being gay, for someone who has little to no sexual attraction to any gender. This sermon will discuss the history of asexuality and how UUs can support the asexual community and asexuals in their lives. We have two lightings of sacred flame. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle, and the second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign people, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. And we are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be a part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's chalice lighting is Cherishing Our Differences by Cindy Fesgen. We are all capable in different ways, with various strengths and talents. We are all holy, part of the universe and the interdependent web. And we light this chalice, cherishing our differences and holding each other in sacredness. Thank you, Bill. Now, we have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. And we know that it can be uncomfortable to stand and speak in front of others. So I will ask for a volunteer, for someone who has been here a while, to tell us their name and how they found out about our church. We ask that you step closely to our microphone here at the front and speak into it directly and clearly so that everybody can hear. However, please be aware that you will be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online. So, do we have any church members who would like to volunteer today? Go for it, Dinah.
Good morning, I'm Dinah Rowe. My husband Bill and I have been members of this church since 2004. Prior to that, we were members at the Long Beach Church, and we moved to this area, so we joined here. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's how it's done. So if you're new here, a visitor, or perhaps an old friend, please raise your hand and come up to the microphone at the front of the pulpit. If there's someone online as well and you'd like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand and we will call on you through Zoom. Please let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you found out about us. Do we have any visitors today who would like to introduce themselves? I don't see anyone online either. And so for any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service, because we'd love to chat with you out on the parish hall, where you can also find the visitor's book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you were here, and leave your contact information if you'd like to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to be added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uyochurchofriverside.org. Our music now is Amanda Udis Kessler's All of Who I Am. Please feel free to sing and move as the Spirit moves you, or just enjoy this gift of music.
Something I'm learning day after day, something that steadies my feet on the way, is the truth that my life brought me right to the place I am now. Though I don't know how, there is not a doubt, nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. All that I went through, whatever the cost, I can use on the road to the person I'm trying to be. None of it came free, but all of it is me. All of who I am is beautiful and strong, as I come to know that all of me belongs, my best and my worst, the ways that I've grown, the struggles I've faced, the joy that I've known. There is a blessing I'm trying to understand. It's been there since my life began. I will find it in all of who I am. Some of my kindness comes from my pain. Sorrow and tenderness join once again in a spirit of gentle compassion that helps me accept every last regret and lets me move ahead. Days on the journey, years on the path, wisdom abounding whenever I ask, and I've come to believe that whatever I need I will find. Every single time, love will be my guide. All of who I am is beautiful and strong, as I come to know that all of me belongs, my best and my worst, the ways that I've grown, the struggles I've faced, the joy that I've known. There is a blessing I'm trying to understand. It's been there since my life began. I will find it in all of who I am. All of who I am is beautiful and strong, as I come to know that all of me belongs, my best and my worst, the ways that I've grown, the struggles I've faced, the joy that I've known. There is a blessing I'm trying to understand. It's been there since my life began. I will find it in all of who I am. I will find it in all of who I am.
This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you can also send your checks to the church address shown here, and you can contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is also shown here, as well as the church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in the church each Sunday. Amazon gift cards of a similar nature are also available. You get the full value on the card, but the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe or Robert Braun in the church office if you are interested in purchasing the gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity, and for those who give their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. To all of you who have joined us today, thank you for the gift of your presence. Will our ushers now please come forward to help receive the collection? We will also have a bag passed around to collect goods and hygiene items for those who are in need in Riverside. And our hymn now is number 402, From You I Receive, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand in body or spirit, and join us in singing in hymn number 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive.
Thank you. And our meditation today is by Judith L. Quarles. In this season of beginning, some of us are hurried and harried. Some of us feel sorrow and afraid. Some of us are not yet ready to step forward into the future. May we minister to one another with wisdom, meeting our friends with open ears, open eyes, and open hearts. In this season of beginning, some of us are celebrating triumphs and joys. Some of us feel whole and happy. Some of us are eager and excited, curious to see what happens next. Let us each, as we are able, take part in one another's happiness and enthusiasm. Quiet Spirit of life and love, bring us the grace to share wholly and faithfully in the lives of our friends and loved ones. Amen. Let us now pause for a moment of silence and contemplation. And now I would like to introduce our speaker, Wren Monsour, who will be speaking to us on asexuality and inherent worth. Wren?
You, Alec. Good morning, everyone. Oh, March 6th, was it April? April 6th was International Asexuality Day. Unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, we were not able to have this sermon the day after, but we're doing it now. And I think it is just as important now as it is any week. I'd like to read to you a selection from an article that I found about International Asexuality Day that is translated into English from Italian. It's International Asexuality Day, Why It's Important to Celebrate Asexuality by Francesca Anelli. The visibility of asexual people in public discourse, and even within the LGBTQ+ community, is very low. The representation in the media is almost non-existent, and even the information about this world seems to be scarce, especially in Italian and in general in languages other than English. When and if you talk about it in newspapers or public spaces or public discussion, it is almost always done without giving voice to those who are on the spectrum, but rather to those opinions and the bad faith of the first lying columnist who passes. Also, for this reason, those rare times that end up on the radar of the media, asexuality is perceived as a sort of moda imported from the Anglo-Saxon countries, to the sound of posts by Tumblr, a whim for bored white teenagers. It should be superfluous to point out that reducing the way a person identifies to a passing trend is always an act of violence, particularly when their sexual or gender identity is accompanied by processes of marginalization, invisibilization, and discrimination. But we shouldn't forget that in the constant devaluation of asexuality, what also plays a role is the deeply Western-centric gaze that Europe and the United States want as the fulcrum of world public life, and a point of reference also in terms of feminist and/or queer theories and practices. Obviously, this is a very problematic vision, which also in this case reveals all of its limits. The collectives of aspec people, that is, who identify themselves within the spectrum of asexuality, are present all over the world and very often active and followed. This is the case, for example, of Indian aces, or even of different South American realities and in the Arabic-speaking countries. Not only that, an incorrect reading of asexuality leads to further forms of invisibilization for racialized people, forced to adapt to the hypersexualization of their bodies and the invalidation of their asexual identity. To correct this distorted narrative, asexual activists from all over the world have therefore collaborated in the creation of an event, and especially of a community, that could offer a rich image, and if we want, decolonized one, of asexuality. April 6th has therefore become the International Asexuality Day, or a day dedicated to making the asexual community visible, in particular in non-Western countries, through activism, celebration, education, and solidarity. I think it's important before we go any further to actually define some terms, because I'm sure there's a lot of words that I will be using, even just the word asexuality, that you may have never even heard before at all, or in reference to humans. You may know the word asexual from biology class for asexual reproduction, like of amoebas. I think it should be obvious that is not the definition we're using here today. That asexuality, sometimes shortened to ace, when referring to humans means little to no sexual attraction. A person may have a partner, but they might not want sex, even though they love their partner. They're just not interested in sex. Demisexuality is one of the identities under the asexual umbrella, in which sexual attraction might happen, but only after a person has developed a strong emotional bond. Gray sexuality, or gray ace, another identity within the spectrum, in which sexual attraction may be infrequent or vague. Asexuality is often paired with, or even confused with, a romanticism or aro, in which there's little to no romantic attraction, in which there may be sexual, but just a person may not want to date or marry. Allosexuality is what we would refer to, quote unquote, normal sexuality, in which attraction is easy and fast, where you look at a person and you may know next to nothing about them, but just something about them goes, ooh, yeah. There are many micro labels that can fall under the asexual umbrella that someone might identify with that can be a lot more detailed, but frankly, we do not have the time to go into that today, but you are welcome to and encouraged to look into them yourself. It's really quite fascinating, I think. I do believe it is important to include gray sexuality, demisexuality, and all of these things under the asexual umbrella, because these identities can relate to, quote unquote, pure asexuality, often a lot more than they can relate to allosexuality. And it is important that we have inclusivity and community support. Yes, the ACE flag, which you can see on the screen and in front of you, next to me on the pulpit. The ACE flag was created in the year 2010 on the community website Asexuality Visibility and Education Network, or AVEN, by the user Stand Up. And it was one of many that was voted upon, and this was the design ultimately chosen. The color meanings are black for asexuality, gray for the gray space in between, gray sexuality, demisexuality, everything else. And white meaning non-asexual partners and allies. With the purple meaning community. Purple was chosen because of its use as the main theme color for the Avon website, that community network website. The creator of the site, David J., used it because of a legend that he knew of, in which placing a purple amethyst in a glass of wine prevents someone from getting drunk, allegedly. He used it as a loose metaphor for lack of sexual attraction. A very brief history of asexuality. People say that asexuality is new, but I believe it is really our current sexual theories and studies that are new, our current way of looking at sexuality in general, really within the last century or so, with us trying to analyze and label everything. Before that, there were fewer labels, and these labels and a lot of the discussion was really about action rather than identity. And in regards to asexuality, a lack of action could really be for any number of reasons. So, which is why asexuality as an identity has really only been studied recently, though I guarantee if we could talk to people 1,000 years ago, we would no doubt find people who would identify this way. The first known reference to such an idea was in 1865 by a man named Carl Maria Kentbeny, who is the first man who, same man who created the terms homosexual and heterosexual. In these writings, he wrote of what he called monosexuals, meaning people who only masturbated. As you can see, talking not about identity, but rather actions. The first known use of the word asexual referring to humans was in 1907 by Reverend Carl Schlegel in New Orleans. He was removed from church office for advocating for equal laws regarding, quote, homosexuals, heterosexuals, bisexuals, and asexuals. Knowledge of asexuality became slightly more mainstream in 1948 when the Kinsey scale included a category for men who reported, quote, no sociosexual contacts or relations. You may know the Kinsey scale as one model of understanding sexuality, a sliding scale between completely straight and completely gay, with bisexuality in the middle. So it was a revelation to include people who just didn't even do that. The sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s brought a lot of new writing and community building for asexuality. In 2001, David J. founded the Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network, AVEN, which became the biggest and most well-known asexual community in the internet age. In 2010, ACE Week, or Asexuality Awareness Week, was founded by Sarah Beth Brooks. It is celebrated on the last full week of October. And then in 2021, the International Asexuality Day was founded and is celebrated on April 6th. The genderbread person, which, as you can see, everyone is made up of many different parts. A lot of people think that, oh, it's all connected, it's all one thing. But really, as you can see, it's all different parts, and not all the parts really match in the way we think they might. There is biological sex, which would mean things like your genitals, your DNA, your hormones, which there is a lot of variety in that. It really is not just one thing or the other. There is so much variety. There's gender identity, which is how you feel, which is usually a man, woman, or some variation thereof. There's gender expression, which is how you act and dress according to your culture. For example, two people who have the same identity of woman can have different expressions of that womanhood, such as girly girl or tomboy. Two different expressions that are still the same identity. Sexual attraction is when there is a certain type of person or trait that arouses you and makes you desire sex with them, whether or not you know anything else about them. To contrast that with sexual behavior, which is the actions you take or don't take, regardless of desire. For example, a straight person may choose to be celibate for religious reasons, but that doesn't make them not straight. Romantic attraction, wanting to engage in romantic activity with a person or type of person, which is frankly a lot more difficult to define. People are still figuring that out. But then romantic behavior may depend on your culture, can include public displays of affection, like kissing or hand-holding. And again, romantic behavior, whether you are actively dating someone or not, doesn't change your romantic attraction, who you're attracted to. And then there's libido, which is the physical desire for sexual stimulation unrelated to any partner a person may have or not have. A person may find a partner, masturbate, or just completely ignore it. There are a lot of misconceptions about asexuality that I want to discuss and clear up. A big one is that asexual people just haven't found the one, or, oh, they just have really high standards. And when someone says this to you, it is dismissive, it is delegitimizing, and it's frankly none of their business. Asexual people have been called cold or unloving. And frankly, I want to say there are many, many types of love, that just because someone doesn't feel sexual attraction to someone else doesn't mean they can't love in other ways. A lot of people don't want to have sex with their grandparents, but they can still love them. There's a misconception that asexual people are traumatized in some way. I don't gatekeep, and some people may choose to identify as ace, even though they weren't born this way. They are still welcome in the community and can benefit from being part of the community. But it is important to know that many ace people are not traumatized and don't need help getting over it. that we don't want marriage. Perfect counterexample, me. I am asexual. I am very happily married. As you can see, my beautiful, wonderful wife over there. And as far as I know, she's very happily married to me. Asexuality is, I remind you, different from aromanticism. And yeah, that asexual people don't want sex, don't masturbate, don't enjoy pornography. I think this is a common misconception that, again, calls back to our earlier ideas of sexuality in general that was focused on action rather than identity. There is a wide spectrum. People can identify as sex repulsed or sex favorable or neutral. There are many reasons to have sex, such as to enjoy just the physical act or to emotionally bond with a partner. And admittedly very informal, but a study showed that the best and most read erotica novelists are asexual, because these authors focus on character-driven story and emotions rather than simple descriptions of the act. It's time to talk about discrimination. I want to read a blog post by a friend of mine. Her username is On Bare Feet. When you don't have a word for yourself, the world will give you one, and it will not go well for you thereafter. Every ace I know over a certain age, every one who has learned their word in adulthood rather than before, had a word they discarded to take up the new one. I collect them. These words were applied in childhood usually, and they were not words a child should have to bear. Monster, freak, broken, defective, sick, failure, deficient, wrong, bitch, snob, frigid, uptight, prudish, and amazingly, slut, whore, etc., from people who assumed that the ace was secretly having all the sex and just lying about it. Imagine slapping one or more of these words on a literal child because the child didn't have a crush on anyone at school, or went stag to prom, or didn't dream about a wedding, or failed to jerk off to Playboy in the garage. I got slapped with half a dozen of these words, but the one I chose for myself was the kindest one I've heard so far. Alien. I started telling people I was from another planet at age 12. It was half a joke, half not. Being neurodivergent and uninterested in boys or girls was more bearable if I just pretended I wasn't human. I will say that again. I preferred not being human to being an unlabeled ace. So yeah, the words matter to a lot of us. The words remind us that we're human too, that we have opinions, options beyond just being monsters. Let us choose our words. Let us use our words. Don't be a dick about it. It's none of your business anyway, after all, because you and I both know what happens when people are forced to be monsters. Asexual people, as you can imagine, are discriminated against from straight society in a number of ways. Not really hated as a community as some other queer identities, but rather individually. Pathologized, said, oh, it's a medical issue. called cold or slutty, attacked with corrective rape, where, oh, you just need to be shown a good time. Mistaken for gay, because if you don't like the opposite sex, then obviously the only other option is you're gay. And of course, there's all the discrimination in that regard. There's the idea that marriages are expected to be both romantic and sexual. And if you have a sexless marriage, well, obviously there's something wrong with your marriage. There's, of course, I can only speak as a white American, but the cultural expectation that romantic and sexual relationships are prioritized over any kind of friendship or relationship or community. It is a statistical fact that when a person enters a long-term romantic sexual relationship, they lose about 5 friends because suddenly they just don't hang out with other people as much. And I think it is important for us to acknowledge that reality and understand that not everyone wants to live that way. You may be surprised to hear asexuals are discriminated against even within the queer community. Many people hold the idea that queerness should be defined by the trauma you experience, by the discrimination you've faced by straight society, that asexual people are straight passing, that, well, you're not visibly queer, so you don't belong. And unfortunately, this is not unique to asexual people. Transgender or gender nonconforming people who are blessed to not experience gender dysphoria are told that they aren't trans. Bisexual people are told to pick a side or stop complaining because if they happen to have a partner of the opposite sex, then they can pass. How this relates to UUism, I think it is very clear in our principles. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We are whole and complete people, even when we are not upholding the cultural idea of adulthood, such as marriage, sex, and children. We are not missing out. We are not broken. We have worth and dignity, even when we don't live or act as you do. Second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. As the history of discrimination shows, this is sorely needed, both socially and legally. Fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. What is true for one person may be false or incomplete for another. I am still learning things about myself even today. We must allow each other to question and search for our own truths. How to be an ally. When I asked my friend who has the username On Bare Feet if I could recite her blog post for my sermon, she very happily agreed. And she also shared another anecdote that she asked me to share. When I started telling people I was an alien, most of the other kids in my class began making fun of me for it. But my best friend, arguably the most popular and well-liked boy in the class, announced that he was an alien too. He's straight, married to a pretty blonde woman now, with cherubic little kids. We grew apart over the years, but I've never forgotten. It was the first experience of allyship I ever had. One of the most important things, one of the most important ways to be an ally is to be open to learning new things, even if that means reevaluating some of your long-held beliefs. Respect what someone tells you about themselves, even if you don't really understand. You can still respect someone and have compassion. And if you want to do more and be more involved, you can reach out to advocacy groups. There is the Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network at asexuality.org. The Ace and Arrow Advocacy Project at tap.org. The official website for the International Asexuality Day, as well as Asexual Awareness Week, aceweek.org. I didn't have time to put it on the slide, but also I discovered that one of the most recommended books about asexuality, titled Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex, written by Angela Chen, is actually published by Beacon Press, which is a UU publishing company. And I just think that is amazing and worthy of sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Wren. And now to finish us off, our closing hymn is number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, from the Gray Hymnal. Please feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing,
Changes abound around us, within us, between us, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and in our beloved faith communities. Changes abound. May we each find the balance point we need as we move through our ever-changing world. The balance between the new and the old, between the known and the unknown, between the familiar and perhaps bold and risky possibilities that may be there, waiting. Namaste. Amen. And blessed be. Thank you, Wren, for sharing your valuable time and your insights with us this morning. We will have a 10 to 15-minute Q&A session following the service for those who want to share their thoughts on today's topic, but be aware this is included on the video that is posted online. And for the rest of you, you are now welcome to join into the parish hall. And I would, Wren, if you'd like to give your response to questions or additional comments, and if anyone would like to come up and share their thoughts, or if there's anybody online who would like to share anything with us.
Come on up, Bill. Thank you.
On the labeling angle, as far as asexuality goes, one of the things that gets a little interesting is you have the ancient Greeks who had a very much a women for sons, men for the fun or for the emotional side of things. And you had groups like the Theban pair bonds and some of the other. You had the Spartans and every bad movie featuring way too much olive oil and pecs. But the idea that there was definitely a separation and a different labeling process for what different genders were for, and it was considered to be, I think, nobody's damn business, or you didn't. It would be surprising if you had your wife at home was actually someone you had closer connections to. And even today, you have people who are saying that, as Overton's window pushback against what's happening today. You've got people who, and the MGTOW and people like that, saying that emotionally, that they have stronger ties to men and a greater distrust for women. So even without the label of asexual in there, we wind up with some changes on things. By the way, one of the categories that might have gotten messed up in there is the idea that in this poverty-stricken time that, I've got money enough to go running to a singles bar and find the partner of my choosing. The idea, I happen to live a few blocks away from 3 or 4 pubs here, and they're not necessarily designed as singles pubs during the day, and that's when I prefer to be out, because the other stuff turns into a wall of sound that lowers connection. Mm-hmm. So the labeling process, if somebody isn't willing to sit there and take 90% of their take home and turn it into the pursuit of happiness via taking an Uber out to the club and going after that, that you're a weirdo if you don't. There's also the whole thing that says, when it comes to marketing, the powers that be would love us to be really, really interested in something so that they can sell us the tchotchke that's supposed to open the door up to the mating game.
The idea that sex sells.
Yes.
Not to everyone.
Yeah. And my mom, you please slide into a window to where I can drill my product home. The sex sells thing. But in an office, it's gotten to the point where what they would like to see the most would be non-sexualized rules. Is the report ready? And Ed, Edie, is the report ready? In that case, the best way for a supervisor to be is relatively uncaring about your gender interests. Just they want to know if the report's ready.
Thank you, Bill. Well,
when I changed schools from a rural to an urban school, the rural had maybe 15 kids at the most per grade. The urban had like 100. So you have much more variety. I was sitting in study hall and this boy comes up to me. This was when I was a junior. He said, so do you like sports? How about football? Girls, what do you want to do? And I said, my dad always told me to be honest. So I said, actually, my interest is electricity and I like magnets. He looked at me and he said, you're weird. And off he went. So I was really kind of shocked. I thought this may not go well in this new school. Next day, this kid sits down across from me, admittedly looking actually a little bit like a bookworm. He said, you seem to be new in school. I don't recall your being here before. What are your interests? I thought, I'll try it again. I said, I like electricity and I like to play with magnets. He said, I have a friend who's the son of a physicist, retired professor, and the kid likes physics as well. He said, my thing's chemistry. Welcome. They became my two best friends, and I knew him, especially the one that talked to me. That time, he was my friend throughout, not just high school, but college as well. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Wren, for that really nice talk. Very informative, and I really like that. And I'll be looking up that UU Publishing Company and that book, perhaps. Can you give us the title of that book one more time?
Yes.
And yeah, while you're pulling that up, oh, go ahead.
Not there. Yeah, it is ACE, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen, published by Beacon Press.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll come up.
You wanna
Yeah.
take a picture of it? Or?
Yeah, I'll get it later. Thank you. So one thing that I've noticed is that and you touched on some of the many terms that we use to describe asexuality and the asexual spectrum. And I think one thing that makes it very difficult for people to come to accept all of these ways of sexual expression is that is part of this explosion of terminology, in that we have at least what appears to be a nice simple system where you're either straight or you're gay, and maybe there's a couple other options, and now suddenly there's dozens of options and you have to choose, and you're overwhelmed with choices. You now have dozens of things that you have to choose between, and I think part of the reason why we see this explosion in terminology is because we're trying to describe this space of sexual expression, which is not so simple to look at as either this or that, but there's sort of a range of sexual expressions that we are trying to describe using all of these different terms and all of these different ways of expressing oneself. And so I think there is a way to reconcile that and sort of get the best of both worlds, because I think, in science, we often find that these complicated looking systems are often describable in just a few simple terms. And I think in looking at how do we understand all of these different ways of expression, even just all these many ways of expression within the asexuality spectrum, we have to address what is sexuality in the first place. And you had a nice slide showing the person with they have their identity in their mind, they have their actions that they use to express themselves, and their bodily experience. And I think that it's not as, and you've demonstrated quite clearly that we can't simply look at somebody's actions and conclude something just from that. But we also know that it's not, I think it's clear even just intuitively that it's not something that is purely a performance in the way that gender is. It is something that, and I do think that there is a measurable effect that we can see inside our brains, and that is the experience and the subjective experience that we all have had, well, that most of us have had, of sexual response. That there is some kind of stimulus that we are exposed to in the environment that we're in, and that induces a sexual response in us. And when we want to then describe what our sexuality is, we not only are trying to describe what is it, what is that response that we're feeling, and what does that internal response drive us to want to do physically, but also it has to do with then what kind of genders are in when we look at what are the stimuli that are inducing those internal responses, those sexual responses, what gender do we associate with those feelings that we may or may not be feeling. And from what I've heard from the literature, that we can understand this sexual response in terms of two different things. I mean, you can think of them kind of like the accelerator and the brake on a car, where there are things that sort of activate the sexual stimulus, and there are things that suppress the sexual stimulus, things that might push on the accelerator or might push on the brakes. So things that are gross, even if you are in a situation that you might otherwise consider to be a sexual situation, if there's something really gross there, well, you might not really feel like having sex. And so that sexual response, that feeling of desire that induces us towards action, it has sort of these two mechanisms, and how sensitive your accelerator and your brake are play a big role in your experience of that sexual response. And from what I've heard in the literature is that so the technical terms for these are sexual excitation stimuli and sexual inhibition stimuli. So SES and SIS, or SES or CIS for short. And so so your personal level of response to SES and CIS play a big role in your experience of sexuality and sexual desire. And when polling people who identify as asexual, they report that when they're given the same questionnaire that they give to what you called allosexuals, they report similar levels of inhibition. So their brakes on their car have a similar sensitivity, but a very low sensitivity on the accelerator. So it's very low sensitivity to things that would normally be considered excitation factors. But there's another important component other than just how sensitive is your brake and accelerator, and that's the aspect of context. The idea that I've seen is that largely there is, we can think of sexual response in two broad contexts. We can think of it in terms of, and you touched on this as well, there's spontaneous sexual response and there's responsive sexual response. And both of these are very much driven by context. It's much more common for men to experience spontaneous sexual responses. although it's not perfectly correlated at all. But that experience where you're not in a situation which you would consider to be sexual, and you are exposed to some stimuli. Maybe you see somebody who you think is really good looking walking down the street, and suddenly you feel the desire to engage in a sexual act. But many people do not feel this spontaneous sexual response. They only feel responsive sexual desire only when they are in a context where they're expecting sexual interaction to occur, only after expecting that sexual experience that they are that they are consenting to. Only then do they experience that the sexual response, the actual desire to engage in a sexual act, and this is all based in context. And there's a lot of metaphors for this, but I like the one which is like a garden, where every person has like a little plot of land, and what things respond to cause a sexual response in you, what plants can grow in your garden, depends on a lot of different conditions. And so the context that you're in really plays a big role in that. And so I think we can understand all of these different sexual expressions, and including the many forms that you outline on your slide there, between demisexual to asexual and everything in between. I think we can understand them using just a few of these tools that are really starting to be studied in detail. Sorry for that long rant. That's all I have to say, though.
Thank you. That was very cool.
You're never too old to learn. And one of the basic ways of learning is by simplifying. Definitions mean a lot. Your presentation was fantastic, and I want to thank you. I'll talk more with you about that independently, but thank you for today. Thank you for what you've given to this church and what you gave today. Very enlightening, really a great presentation. And Alec, thank you for your added information too. But again, never too old to learn more about oneself. Is the song that was done at the beginning chosen by you? Because I'd love to get that written down, because many times the lyrics in a song, not just the melody, but the lyrics have such tremendous lead in and meaning. And then came your lovely presentation. So I want to thank you for that. You're a gift to this location. You're a gift to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I'll tell you about the songs.
In that case,
I'll tell you about the songs.
In that case, last call for final questions before we go and have our break.
Well, I do want to share. The genderbread person, I just took a little clip of that.
Yeah.
This is the full one. Yeah. Whereas, as you can see, the full poster shows, goes into much more detail about gender identity, how you could think about it as two different modes of going from nothing towards womanness, as well as nothing towards manness. For gender expression, anatomical sex assigned at birth could be completely different. And of course, anyone, all of us, can have our points at any place on any of these. So for the purpose of this presentation, I did just clip the little image, but yeah, since you brought it up, I wanted to show that you can actually get this in like a full poster.
I'm sorry, there's a brief part two to my discussion before, and that was part of that a member of that first group, female, came up to me and she said, I've heard your interest in science, but that means you must be smart. She was the daughter of a manager of the store, of a local store. So she came from affluent circles or even higher. She said, we can do Cokes. And in my mind, my subconscious put up to the surface, stupid.
Okay. Bill, you've got the final comment, and then that'll be it for today.
Earlier on is being sometimes cool. What about the ones that are not meant to be cruel, but it's just sort of like, I mentioned the thing earlier that says, yes, I'm attracted to women, but you know something? I'm not going to sit there and spend a ton of money for a maybe at a bar. If it happens, I'm open to it. But is it common if you have somebody who isn't exactly at bat every single time, strikes out on occasion, and there aren't that many strikes to be had? Do you get hit with the asexual label, or are you just one of those people where people don't bother naming you one way or the other and just go on about their business? I think it's more the second, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's generally pretty rude to label someone else, that it's generally accepted that people will label themselves and you respect whatever label someone has chosen for themselves. In the situation that you're describing, I would say you're describing the difference between attraction and action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a barrier to the action.
Yeah. And that
yeah.
With our current general understanding and terminology of sexuality, we would tend to use labels in regards to identity rather than action. So it doesn't matter, whether, it doesn't matter who someone is dating or how often, or whether they're dating anyone at the moment, that what their identity is, who or what they're attracted to, that would be how they would identify.
Okay, I think I get it. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, one last thank you to our speaker, Wren, and thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments, and let us all now have that coffee finally.